This is Julio's Corner, my corner of the internet, where I talk about whatever is on my mind. It's usually stuff that I've watched, read, or listened to. This episode is being recorded on Sunday, August 23rd, 2026. And as always, I am your host, Julio from New York. And welcome back to the show. As always, I am Julio from New York. Today we're going to talk about Ted Lasso, specifically Season 1. So I've rewatched Season 1 of Ted Lasso, and I have a couple of thoughts I want to get into before I go over the basic plot points of Season 1 and just other things I've caught and noticed. So if you haven't seen Season 1, be warned, there will be spoilers, of course. So, as I mentioned in the last episode, this was a show that I watched around time of COVID. And let me open the link. I should have opened this earlier, but I am silly like that. So here we are. Where is the date that it originally... 2020. Yeah, so exactly during the time of COVID. And so, of course, it was a light at the end of the tunnel. It was a silver lining in an otherwise very dark time. And it was a great show. There was no football to be watched, so this scratched a little bit of that itch, and so on. However, now in 2026, rewatching Season 1, the one thing that really caught my eye, that was very glaring on this rewatch, that it wasn't in the initial watching of the show, was the bad football choreography. The World Cup was just last month, so I had a whole month of really well played football. I can tell the difference between good football and bad football. And the football that is portrayed on the show Ted Lasso, and they show very little of it for very obvious reasons, because when you do actually finally see the characters playing on the pitch, it doesn't look really good. Like their speed is bad. They're very slow, and of course for obvious reasons, because they're not professional footballers, so they have to be slow. So that way, when they make blocks or slide kicks to steal the ball and whatnot, you don't want to actually injure the actor in question, because you're trying to execute a certain scene in the plot point of the story. So that probably plays a part into it. Also, the fact that none of these are footballers, except for one guy. He actually plays football right now in like some minor league in the U.S. or Mexico. The guy who says football is life. I think that's the one name. I think his name is Danny Rojas. That's his name, Danny Rojas. Anyways, so he actually is playing football right now in 2026 professionally, which is kind of interesting. He's a much older guy for a footballer. You know, he's in his late 30s, which is close to retirement age, or definitely past your peak at the very least. Anyways, point is, that was very glaring. So that's probably going to something I'll keep an eye on in the following 2 seasons of Ted Lasso, and of course Season 4 when I finally do get to that after it completes its run. But yeah, I didn't notice how bad it was back then, because I didn't have anything to compare it to. Whereas this time around, I've just finished watching the World Cup, so I had plenty of memories fresh in my mind of how good real football is, and then to compare it to the scenes that they portrayed in the show was really glaring. How bad it was. How it just wasn't as good as real football. Anyways, I mean, they tried their best for their inability, their lack of athleticism. They tried their best, but yeah, for someone definitely with a better eye than mine. That probably was a very big glaring thing, even in its initial run, because people were watching Premier Football and all that stuff for however many times. So any of those people that decide to watch Ted Lasso, they would have immediately picked up on that. Whereas me, I wait every 4 years to watch the World Cup or the Euros and Copa America. So there wasn't any of those tournaments happening around this time. Moving on. So Ted Lasso, of course, is the main character of the show. It's the name of the show, Ted Lasso. He's this guy, this I think he was Division 3 or Division 2 football coach from the States who decides to take a job for a football club in England for the AFC Richmond club. And he brings along his assistant, Coach Beard, along for the ride. Now, Rebecca Welton is the current owner of AFC Richmond. She divorced her husband for cheating on her and finally getting caught in apparently one of his many affairs. Apparently, this has been an ongoing thing, and Rebecca Welton had enough and got the ownership of his beloved AFC Richmond team in the divorce. And so her diabolical plan, her revenge plot, so to speak, is to burn AFC Richmond to the ground, which is why she hires this relatively newcomer coach of American college football to be the coach of her professional club, the AFC Richmond club. And of course, everyone is freaking out like, who is this Ted Lasso guy? Like, he doesn't even know about he doesn't know what this sport is. He doesn't know what football is. He does this American football, which is nothing like our football. He doesn't know what a pitch is. He doesn't know what a club is. He doesn't know what a nutmeg is. He doesn't know any of our football terms. He's all about touchdowns and field goal kicks and punts and running plays and things of that nature, which is not how this football is played. And of course, for what's her name again? Rebecca Welton, this is great news because this is what she wants. She wants, again, to destroy this place, destroy AFC Richmond, burn it to the ground, make it get relegated to Champions League because the cream of the crop is Premier League. And if you're in last place, you get relegated to the next level down, which is called Champions League. And of course, you can keep getting relegated to lower and lower divisions. But for now, the next stop below is called Champions League. So, anyways, her head of operations is Leslie Higgins. He's a yes man. However, he does have some moral qualms about this plan to bring AFC Richmond to the ground, burn it to the ground. Nate the Great, as I mentioned last week, I forget what his last name is. I just call him Nate the Great. It's easier that way. That's the Indian kid. He's I think they call him the Kit Man. He's the guy who helps. He's the equipment boy, so to speak. He makes sure everyone has their towels, their water bottles, make sure all the gear is, all the maintenance, all the upkeep is up and proper and and to the point. Another character, Keely Jones. She is an influencer turned publicist. She is the current girlfriend of AFC Richmond, Jamie Tart, who's actually from Manchester City, but he's playing for AFC Richmond on loan because they do that in Premier League. They like to sometimes loan their players off to other teams for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't follow Premier League, but that's the storyline for that character, Jamie Tart, who's a narcissist. He's the best player on the team, and he is a ball hog, and he doesn't believe in teamwork. He just believes, just give me the ball, I'll do the rest. And you learned through season 1 why he's such a douche. Rupert Mannion is the ex-husband, as I mentioned, of Rebecca Wilton, and he's the former owner of AFC Richmond, and he wants to make Rebecca Wilton's life miserable because he's a douche of a husband, of an ex-husband, and he's bitter and resentful that Rebecca took his ownership of AFC Richmond, and so he wants to get back at her in any way that he can. We have a reporter named Trent Krim. He's the reporter for The Independent. He's a bit of a wordsmith, and at first he is cynical and ready to tear Ted Lasso apart. But after following him for a day, as he was promised by Rebecca Welton, who was hoping he would write what do they call those? A scathing article. There's another term for that, but she hoped he was going to write a scathing article. However, following Ted Lasso around, he was won over by Ted Lasso's charm and optimistic naivete, and just always looking at the his whole approach in life of positive intent and things like that. And of course, there's a local bar in Richmond where all the fans of AFC Richmond go to, owned by this ornery old woman called Mae Green. So this is your main characters. Did I mention Roy Kent? No, I did not. Roy Kent is the angry former star. So he's the old angry guy that I mentioned last week, whose name I kind of mixed up with Jamie Tart. So you have Roy Kent, the angry old former star, and Jamie Tart, the douche, the current new star. So those are the players. As I mentioned, the main plot is Ted Lasso decides to leave the U.S. to take this incredulous job to coach AFC Richmond for a sport he's never coached, because his only credentials is so far he had a year with a third division college football team who he won over, and he became viral for bringing this last place team into first place in their division of the NCAA football division, college football. So anyways, he comes over, and little by little he starts winning over the people of of Richmond and the players of AFC Richmond, and of course eventually in the end he does win over Rebecca Welton, because even though she originally wanted to burn Richmond to the ground, in the end she realizes that what she's doing is petty and unfair to everyone else involved with AFC Richmond, because they have nothing to do, the players, the club, the community, they're not Rupert Mannion. Rupert Mannion is Rupert Mannion. He's the guy that you should aim all your vile to, and making everyone in the AFC Richmond club isn't really the answer. If anything, helping it be more successful and better than under his helm would probably be a sweeter revenge, and also it would just be better for you overall, because you it'd be uplifting. You already are developing friendships and bonds with all these other people, and getting love from the community and so on. So as I mentioned, Keely Jones, former social influencer turned publicist for Richmond. How that happened is through the course of the first season, she develops a relationship with Rebecca Welton, and that was sort of nudged by Ted Lasso, because at first she was in awe and intimidated by Rebecca Welton, but Ted Lasso was helped her see Rebecca Welton in a different light. So she approached her in a more friendly manner. There was a scene where some scandalous article came out regarding Rupert Mannion has a new Rebecca in his arms, replacing old Rebecca, so to speak. Or maybe there was another scandal. I forget. It definitely was around that point. That must have been a second story. But point is, something similar to that, where Rebecca started feeling her insecurities because of the divorce and how Rupert Mannion mentally manipulated her and mentally abused her, and always picked her apart and made her develop all these personal insecurities. um, Keeley helped build her up, and that helped build, that whole sisterhood bonding helped build this friendship. And so Rebecca, is her name Rebecca? Yeah, Rebecca decides to hire Keeley to be their publicist to help, um, be a publicist for the team and for the players, help them get sponsorship deals and so on. And ironically, in before that happened, though, there was a moment where Keeley was doing a photo shoot for some beer, where she had to be dressed up like a lion or something. And Ted Lasso went over to see her because he was trying to break through to Jamie Tart, because again, Jamie Tart is this douche narcissist who won't. He doesn't believe in teamwork. He doesn't believe in team unity. And Ted Lasso's all about making us a family and having us all be unified as one. And having this one dissenter is breaking up that dynamic he's trying to create. So as he's there eating burgers with her and helping clean her mouth, because she has all this um, prosthetics or whatever for the photo shoot that's making it impossible for her to really eat her food by herself without assistance. As he's wiping off her face with a napkin to wipe off like the ketchup or whatever on her face. Leslie Higgins takes, actually no, a photographer, a paparazzi that was hired by Rebecca Walton, takes these photos of them to try to portray a possible affair between Ted Lasso and Keely Jones. And in the end, those photos don't come to light. They don't get published, I should say. However, they eventually do this. Keely eventually does discover who sent that photographer out to create this story, and that causes this fracture in this newly developed friendship between Keely and Rebecca. And towards the end, she does, like I said, Rebecca does eventually realizes the error of her ways, and how, because Ted has been nothing but kind to her in all that time. And then when there was like this one last, well, now that she got caught by Keely, who she does care for or learn to care for, and didn't want to lose that newly developed friendship, because she also helped her reestablish her other strong friendship with an old female in her past. She was going to speak to Ted Lasso about it, but she was freaking out. And then Rupert came, and I forget what was the bombshell he threw at her to make her feel. Oh yeah. He wanted to let Rebecca know that his new wife, Rebecca too, is going to get is now pregnant. To throw in her face that it wasn't that I didn't want kids, I just didn't want to have kids with you. And I just wanted you to know, because I wanted to see your reaction as I tell you that it wasn't it wasn't me, it was you in the end. And knowing that is that, knowing that what type of reaction Rupert is trying to get out of her to just be cruel, she finally, storms into Ted's office and confesses that, what, this whole time that I've hired you and all these possible blow ups that were happening, they were actually machinations orchestrated by myself, and I wanted to do it to make you. I wanted you to fail, and the reason I wanted you to fail was because I wanted to because this is Rupert Mannion's uh, metaphorical child, and I wanted to kill, and destroy this child in his face, and I wanted to make him suffer the way he made me suffer in this in our marriage and slash divorce. And Ted forgives her. So Ted forgives her immediately, which stunlocks her. She's like, "Wait, what? Huh? Hi? Why?" And he just forgives her. Like, he's like, "I understand why you did what you did, and even though I'm a little disappointed for the reason of it, I forgive you, and we'll get over it, and we will rebuild our bond over time. But right now, I got a game to prepare for, and yeah, I forgive you, and it's okay." And so she's flabbergasted by it, but at least that is gone, and they move on. So in the end, of course, because the team isn't good, and actually Jamie Tart at some point was sent back to Manchester City. So as fate would have it, their last game of the season was against Manchester City, with Jamie Hart starting and being the one to put the final nail in the coffin to eliminate them, to beat them, I should say, which thereby, because of their record and other intangibles of other teams winning records above them and so on, they were relegated to Champions League. So that's how season one ends. And even though they get relegated, Ted Lasso is still going to stay as coach. Rebecca Welton no longer is going to try to sabotage him. And Nate the Great got promoted from kit handler, equipment boy. I don't know what the title is. I forget. To also part of the coaching staff. They hired a new guy to replace him as the equipment person. So his name stays Nate the Great, because he's going to be their offensive guru. Roy Kent plays his final game in that last game of the season, because he gets a knee injury in the end when he blocks one of Jamie Tart's initial attacks to the pitch to the net when they're in the box. He does a slide, kicking the ball out of his possession, but he injures his knee in the process, which ends his career. Him and Keely Jones end up becoming an item at the end of season one. She breaks up with Jamie Tart because Jamie Tart is Jamie Tart, and actually had not realizing that he didn't really care about the relationship the way a relationship of someone that wants to be in a serious relationship would care about it. She decides to break up with him, and over the course of the season, after breaking up with Jamie, she starts having overtures towards Roy, which Roy, of course, is happily accepting them because he was already attracted to Keely, and she noticed, and so they become a couple at the end. Now, a couple of things I want to bring up that I noticed. Again, I knew this sort of in the back of my head during the first watch, but I was absorbing it all in its entirety, and it was many, many years ago, so I haven't really been thinking about it until this rewatch, and I want to bring it back now. A couple of themes that I found fascinating in season one of Ted Lasso. One was, of course, the parallels of divorce between Ted Lasso with his wife and Rebecca Wilton with her husband. Ted Lasso and his wife, it wasn't because of infidelity or bad behavior from either party. It just wasn't working out for whatever reason. They don't really go into too much detail, but part of the reason why Ted Lasso took this job in England was because apparently in one of their discussions where they feel like the marriage was failing, was she told him she needs her space. She needs some space between them. So Ted Lasso's like, okay, well, you can't have more space than me going to a whole other country across the Atlantic Ocean. Like, I'll give you your space. Um, and in giving her that space, you the fractures were just too strong to resolve because his wife, for whatever reason, just fell out of love with him. And again, it wasn't because either cheated on the other or either had thoughts of infidelity or attraction to other people. It just, there were some factors. Maybe part of it was that his undying optimism for her was just unbearable. Like, maybe she suffers from depression, like she has bouts of depression, and his view on life of always being optimistic and whatnot um, wasn't compatible with her, especially during those bouts of depression where she just needed probably consoling. And he's like, "Well, let me fix it," and that kind of personality um, clash um, help create those fractures. So you have that relationship that fails because of not because of infidelity or toxicity, but because of other factors. And it's heartbreaking for both people, but they come to an amicable resolution of divorce. And then you have Rebecca Wilton with Rupert Mannion, who is the polar opposite. This was a toxic relationship. Rupert Mannion was controlling, manipulative, a philanderer, an egoist. Rebecca Wilson, I think she was a model or something before she got married to Rupert Mannion, and then she was just Rupert's Rebecca, and apparently her personality changed when under the marriage because he kept picking at her like, you don't do this right, you don't do that right, and so forth and so on. And it just bit by bit, he remolded her in his own image, so to speak. And in the end, it didn't matter because he still cheated on her. He would have other mistresses during the marriage. And at some point, Rebecca was like, enough is enough, especially because this last affair was so publicized and it was so humiliating to her. At least that's how she felt. That's how she took it. And she's like, I'm fed up with being disrespected in this manner in such a public way. I have to have some self dignity, some pride, and respect for myself at this finally. And so that's what ended their marriage. And because of them both having divorces around the same time period, when Ted Lasso was going through panic attacks, Rebecca, even though on the one hand she was trying to sabotage him, on the other, she empathized because she went through that. She understood the mental downfalls that Ted Lasso was going through with his marriage failing because she had just ended her marriage and her marriage failed, and she could see the cues that he was going through, so she was able to help support him at times when he was having panic attacks and not able to cope, and so she would be there to lend him some support. So there was that going on, and I appreciated that study of human behavior, so to speak. Speaking of which, a lot of the things that they delve into in the show is human frailty. You have fandom and how toxic fandom can be, but also how wondrous it can be in other ways. You saw how you saw definitions of masculinity being challenged um, by these all these characters. You have Ted Lasso, who's the eternal optimist, and he's not, and he's accepting of all sexual orientations and cultures and creeds and whatever. You have Roy Kent, this ball of anger, who doesn't like to express his emotions because that's not how he was raised. He was raised to be a tough macho man uh, from the rough streets of some British city, some English city. His father was a blue collar guy. I think he was a coal miner or something. I don't remember the detail exactly. But he was raised in that rough tumble, men don't share their feelings kind of way that a lot of stereotypical British archetypes are built on. You have Nate the Great, this very nibbish character. Obviously, he's Indian, so he's a son of immigrants. He has that whole trying to fit in with society, and doesn't know how to fully express himself. Has doubts about his own sexuality as a man in terms of like his attractiveness and his acceptance by society and so on. And of course, you have Jamie Tart, the narcissist, the pretty boy, the alpha male extrovert who doesn't know how to be really sincere unless he's just reading his own accolades. You have Leslie Higgins, he was a yes man. He's just a diligent worker as the operations head of operations for AFC Richmond. He's happily married, has a bunch of kids, as per the stereotype of his religious upbringing or whatever, and his marriage is successful, and he's able to communicate in a way that isn't toxic, doesn't portray toxic masculinity. At the same time, he is sort of conservative, but he's able to be self-deprecating and not be overly arrogant or be too stuck up on entitlement and things of that nature. Um, you have the hypocrisy of patriarchy at play here because Rupert Mannion, as I mentioned, the philanderer, former owner of AFC Richmond, he's still praised and worshipped by some people in the town of Richmond, whereas Rebecca Welton, the the victim, so to speak, the divorcee, um, who doesn't isn't seen in as a favorable light as Rupert Mannion, and yet here you have she's the owner of AFC Richmond, so she should be given her accolades as a professional owner of a team. You have Keely Jones being a publicist and trying to work her way up the career ladder. May Green is a bar owner, um, but they don't really even see her as a female because she's an old woman, so to speak. Um, but yeah, you do see themes of women's sexuality and female identity in society of this show. And for instance, Keely Jones is basically uh, because she was a former influencer and whatnot. She's seen more like a the way models are seen, like a sexual object, so to speak. But she's trying to, and she's made her money and career out of that. Being posing and modeling and showcasing uh, products and brand names and whatnot. But now she's on to sort of being behind the scenes by being a publicist to help push AFC Richmond and trying to be more astute business, being more business savvy in that vein, which is the opposite of what her whole career has been defined up until this point. So I found all that interesting as well, and well brought up and established. And obviously they didn't preach it or anything. It was just portrayed on the show. And it's only season 1, so obviously season 2 is going to build upon that a little more. It'll definitely build more into human frailty, because I believe they get a therapist in season 2. Ted Lasso will definitely need it because now that the divorce is final, he's obviously going to have more panic attacks and go through a dark point in his life, because that completely fractures his identity of not just being an eternal optimist, but always, good things always come to those that work hard at it and whatnot. And yet here he did his best to make his marriage successful, and yet it failed. And I believe their former group therapist, their former psychologist for their group therapy, is now dating his ex-wife. I believe that starts in season 2. As I mentioned, I saw these already, so these are all rewatches. So, spoiler, as I mentioned already, this is going to have spoilers for those who haven't watched a single season of Ted Lasso. So that will be explored more in season 2 about how it's good to therapy is actually a good thing. Mental wellness is something that should be applauded and not ostracized, which is something that American society especially is still has a negative opinion about. That people getting help for their mental wellness is considered a sign of weakness, which it shouldn't. It's actually very healthy to want to improve yourself in that vein. And that wraps up the show. If you have any questions, comments, or any thoughts you'd like to share, you can reach me via email at julioscorner.com. If you're feeling extra generous, you can click on the donate link in the show notes and send some money my way. This show is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 4.0 International License. This means you can share this episode, remix it, do whatever you want. Just say where you got it from. And as always, thanks for listening.